Hello, welcome to Hope in the Light of Suicide. We really appreciate you joining us. We have a very interesting show today. We have a special guest, my friend Kim, and my co-host Bonnie is out in Texas somewhere. Where are you, girl?
Hi, good morning, everybody. As Tammy said, thank you so much for joining us on our third episode. I'm actually in Killeen, Texas this week, visiting family, but I'm blessed, and happy that we were able to do this remotely. And Kim, thank you so much for warming my seat for me. We are thrilled and excited to have you today.
It's my pleasure, Bonnie.
Well, like I said, we have a special guest. We're going to, again, address a couple things in the purple folder from the Bobby White Foundation. And Bonnie, it was funny, the other night I was looking through this on our talking points for suggestions for lost survivors. And ironically, even though, we're picking out certain points to highlight, I was like, we talked about that. We talked about that. Oh, and we talked about that. We're hitting like a lot of these in just our regular conversations every week, which is really kind of cool. But we have my friend Kim on this week because we're going to highlight the importance of mental health and exercise. And especially even now with COVID, it's even more important. And one of our suggestions for survivors is it's common to experience physical reactions to your grief, such as headaches, loss of appetite, and inability to sleep. Exercise kind of addresses some of that, doesn't it, Kim?
It certainly does. Exercise has a place in everybody's world, whether you're looking to just lose weight, stay active, move it or you lose it, that kind of theory. It's also really important for therapeutic reasons. Some people like the, release that they get when they're exercising, when they get into cardio. You hear a lot of people say, when they're stressed, they like to go for a run. They like to build up the adrenaline in their body and have that sense of relief. Having our kickboxing studio is really exciting for people who not only want to lose weight and get into shape, but people who also need that release and they don't have it otherwise. COVID has been such a negative has had a negative impact on a lot of people's mental health right now. They're stuck in the house. They don't socialize a lot. You don't have the human contact, the touching, the hugging, and the things that really help you get through every day. So coming to the gym, to our gym, and just releasing all that on the heavy bags and putting on the boxing gloves just kind of takes you away for a little while.
Nothing better than hitting something.
Exactly.
Well, first I want to kind of introduce you to Kim a little bit more. I met Kim a couple of years ago, and it actually was through business, our networking. And we had a shared experience. And she lost her father to suicide. Not all that long ago, but...
No, and it was funny because I remember the night that you and I were talking, I said, it was a couple of years ago because I hadn't really talked about it a lot. It was actually 10 years ago. So it was quite a while ago.
Well, but it's still... And Kim came to volunteer for... our Foundation for Art for Hope. And it's, like Bonnie and I discussed last week, it's something that it doesn't matter the time, it's always going to be raw.
Correct.
And suicide doesn't, again, discriminate. Like we have shared, my husband was 62 years old, Bonnie's grandson was 14, and her son Bonnie, was he 35, 34?
My son was actually 33 when he passed. But you're right. And as we've said in our previous shows, this epidemic does not discriminate. It knows no age. It knows no no demographic is immune.
That's correct. Your father was how old?
He was 61.
Yeah, so he was right around the same age as.
Yep.
And really, I mean, he lived in Connecticut. Is
Yes,
that correct?
I was living in Connecticut at the time too.
Right. One of the other points which is kind of when I was thinking about you and actually, I think it's actually in one of our pages in the purple folder is healing and finding your new normal. And one of the points is not to make rash or quick decisions. Don't make major decisions. But you had to take care of everything.
Yes.
And
yes.
it had to be done then, because didn't he lose his wife?
Yeah, so what happened was my stepmother, who was in that picture as well, she had gone in for routine surgery. And my dad, about 2.5 years prior to that, he had a brain aneurysm, and it ruptured, and they weren't able to coil it. He was in a coma for about 2 or 3 weeks in the hospital. So when he recovered from that, he recovered with a slight bit of brain damage. So he was never really the same after that. So having been suicidal his entire life, those feelings kind of surfaced as he went through a difficult time. That's what he went back to. That's what he resorted to, because that was the only constant that he could remember. And so when my stepmother went in for surgery, she didn't quite make it out of the surgery. And it was routine, but she was sickly, and we knew that there was a big risk involved in that surgery. So about 7 days later, we had a meeting with the doctors, my stepbrother and his wife, and me and my husband. We had a meeting with the doctors. The only way to catch him was to stay overnight, and I slept in a wooden chair. I'll never forget that chair that night. But the only way to catch him first thing in the morning, because he made his rounds at 5 a.m., was to stay there overnight. So we did. We waited all night long for this doctor to come in so we could talk to him about taking her off life support. We knew that was inevitably, the direction we had to go in. My father refused to go to the hospital that night. He wanted no part of it. In his mind, she was coming home the next day. It was that night that he took his life. So the next day, so while we were at the hospital waiting, as soon as the doctor came in, that's when his neighbor called me. So we all stopped what we were doing, left the hospital, went to their house, and dealt with that. But yeah, I had to clean up all that stuff. So now, I was angry at first because my father liked to put himself in front of everybody for attention. And I was angry because he managed to do it yet one more time. And I'm like, so of course I've gotten through those feelings, but that was my initial reaction. And we went back to the hospital. We didn't have to go back to the hospital. What happened was about 2 hours later, while we were dealing with the investigation, because, when somebody's found
Right.
dead in their house, there's always an investigation.
Right.
So while we're dealing with the police and all them, the hospital called, and we never had to take her off life support. She died on her own. So now we also had the house to deal with. We had their dog to deal with. We had 2 funerals to arrange. So, I mean, it was a lot. It was a lot.
I could not imagine.
And you're right. You shouldn't make major decisions. I remember that day telling them, and my dad and his wife had a German Shepherd who was not the friendliest. She was friendly to us, but she wasn't friendly to strangers. And that's why she was there. She was kind of their watchdog.
protection, yeah.
So without being able to make a decision about the dog, we just asked if it please be taken to the kennel that they used to board her at when they would go on vacation. So just bring her there. I need a couple days to really just process all this because everything happens so fast.
Yeah.
And don't forget, it was in the overnight hours. We hadn't slept. Now it's like the sun is coming up, and and it was just a really stressful time already. And then you throw all this on top of it. So it really did make for a difficult journey. But, even something as simple as trying to decide what to do with the dog, they were all ready to euthanize this dog, which no, I can't handle that right now.
Oh, no.
and we had a cat and a chihuahua at home, so we didn't think that the dog would work, so we're just like one step at a time. And so we ended up taking the dog. Long story short, we did end up taking the dog, and she lived another 5 years with us before she naturally passed away. So yeah, we had her, that was Heidi. And so that part worked out well, but, cleaning the house out and, it was such a mess. The whole situation was a mess. So my father and his wife were together for 27 years, but they were not legally married.
Oh.
So you add a whole nother layer of mess that you have to clean up because now you have to deal with probate, and now you have to deal with, he was on Medicaid because of the brain aneurysm. So now you have to deal with the state of Connecticut at the same time. It was a nightmare. People don't realize what is left behind to clean up after somebody just naturally dies, let alone takes their life, and you're really not expecting it in that capacity. I did not think that my 61-year-old father was going to kill himself. I really didn't.
Yeah, none of us
you don't see it coming sometimes, and sometimes you do see it coming. I wasn't surprised, but I really didn't see it coming.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Oh, no, certainly.
So Kim, let me ask you a quick question to that, because I just heard you say you wasn't surprised. You was not surprised.
Mm-hmm.
How did that, if at all, affect your processing, your father's death? And a follow-up question to that is: were you involved with your gyms and exercise as you are now? Like how cathartic was that? Or at what point did you go back to working out? But also, I want to ask how cathartic, if at all, was it cleaning up the house? I know, you refer to it as a mess, and I get it. But how did that help you, or did it help you?
In all honesty, I was still living in Connecticut. I was still working in my previous role for a corporation up there. I hadn't worked out. I hadn't belonged to a gym. The working out in the gym came after I relocated here, and we relocated here, I think, about 3 years after my father had passed away, because we've been here about 7 years now, 8 years.
Really?
So
Doesn't
yeah,
sound right.
I know. I know. So believe it or not, I was not one to exercise. Back then, I was not living a healthy lifestyle. I was smoking. I was drinking. Not a lot, but, it was part of my everyday life. My father didn't surprise me because that was his go-to comment when he was feeling defeated in any situation. That's it, I'm ending my life. So to hear him say that for my 40 years of my life at that time was not a surprise. It's like, oh, Dad, I can't deal with this right now. So you kind of brush it off and you put it under the rug because it was something I heard on a daily basis,
Right.
and right from the time I could remember. My parents divorced when I was very young. I was, I think, 8 when they divorced. And that was a big part of it. My father had a drug problem. He had an alcohol problem. He kicked those problems later in life as he got closer to, when he settled down in his life, like in his 50s, he kind of settled in. But he was calling me that night and threatening to take his own life and saying what was going to happen. He was kind of dictating and calling play by play of what was going to happen. And I could tell he was slurring his words. I honestly thought he picked up a bottle again, and I never thought for a second that he was actually going through with it. But he took prescription pills. That's how he killed himself. And ironically, these pills, and this is something else that, everyone should be aware of. after his aneurysm, I had conservator over him. So I took him to his doctor's appointments. I was his 100% caregiver. I would take him to his doctor's appointments, and they could not give him a prescription without giving it to me. So I had all of his prescriptions, and he was not in any pain. There was no reason for him to have these pain pills. The doctor, apparently, and I found this out later, after we would get back from the doctor's appointment, I would bring him home. He no longer could drive, so he didn't have a car anymore because of the brain damage. So
Right.
he would have his friend, who I thought was just taking him for coffee in the morning and getting him out of the house after we would get back home. He would have his friend take him back to the doctor, and he would tell the nurse, I forgot to get my prescription for Oxy. And then he would go to the drugstore and have it filled. Even though the doctor and the drugstore were not supposed to give him anything without my consent,
They did it
they
anyway.
still did it. And so he had bottles and bottles and bottles. This was 2 years worth of these prescriptions in the house. And that's what he took to kill himself.
Wow.
So had those prescriptions not been filled and given to him, then I mean, I'm sure he would have found a way elsewhere, but that would
the
not have
means
been.
would have been much harder.
Exactly. It would have
Yeah.
been a lot harder. So,
Wow. Wow.
did I answer your question, Bonnie?
You did. And I'm sitting here thinking, listening to you talk about how, he was able to get all of these prescriptions, and it just brings to light, this whole opioid, epidemic that we have, and how many people have, died as a result of that. As from my story, that's how my Patrick died, was from an overdose. And I'm glad that nowadays, these mechanisms have been put in place to track, prescriptions, and how they are filled. Now, unfortunately, Patrick's was not a prescription. His was, illegal substances, an illegal substance, or he didn't get his drugs through a doctor. Which is a whole nother story. But yes, you did. And, my heart goes out to you. We're in this club that none of us wanted to be in, none of us expected to be in. The other thing that resonated me from your story is when you were saying, my father talked about this often. And, after a while, for some of us, when we hear someone say over and over and over again, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, it results in almost the phenomenon of the boy who cried wolf.
Correct.
It's like, oh, he's, here we go again. Until it's like, no, there they went. They were actually serious this time.
Yep.
Which, again, is one of the reasons why we, take these seriously now. Where before, like I said, I never would have thought that Patrick would be gone. Kira, my daughter-in-law, she said after dinner, the night that Aiden took his life, he looked at her, said goodnight, went upstairs to his bedroom like it was any other day or any other evening, not knowing that was the last time she was going to see him alive. Yes, I can imagine. I can only imagine what you went through. What you went through, especially the double dose of losing not only your dad but your stepmom. At the same time.
Well, and he never acted on it before. It was just.
He did, actually.
Did he?
Yeah,
Okay.
he did over the many years ago. My stepmother actually had called an ambulance a couple times because she suspected he had taken pills. And he had his stomach pumped, a few times. He had ended up in the psych ward, for having attempted. But that I'm aware of, I think it only happened 2 times. And again, he did it while somebody was in the house. So like Bonnie said, I don't know how much of it was a cry of, a boy who cried wolf and knowing that he would be saved because somebody was there. Or if he truly did want to, succeed.
Right.
I'll never know if that night, if I had left the hospital, and gone back to his house, what the outcome would have been. But inevitably, I think that until they actually get help, when somebody is that fixated on it, especially when you have brain damage and you're that fixated on it, they're going to follow through with it eventually. And like Bonnie said, you have no idea when it's going to happen, but it is going to happen. It may be hard to believe because in our minds, we may not, the minds of the loved ones, you may not think that they would ever do this,
Right.
Yeah, and you can't think beyond it.
Right.
I could never think beyond it. I never thought beyond, what is going to happen to my father when my stepmother, when we take her off life support. We couldn't think that far ahead. We had to think in the moment.
You're in that other moment.
So we stayed in that moment. Now, to tie this all back into what else Bonnie asked me, I was not living a very healthy lifestyle, and it was very hard to get through that. It was different. And when we came here, when we relocated here and we bought the gym and we started working out on a regular basis, I realized how important this was. Because at any time, and believe me, before I came here, I worked out, I hit the bags because I knew I had to. But you have to get yourself moving. I have a hard time working out and exercising when I'm not in the right frame of mind. And what that means is if I'm really sad, the pandemic, this and that, everything is kind of bringing you down. That's when you need it the most.
That's true.
It is definitely when you need it the most, and it's the hardest during those times. I have no problem with a clear head getting up in the morning and going out for a run and going to the gym. But when I don't have a clear mind, I have to force myself to do it. And I always am thankful that I did. I never regret. I cannot ever tell you that I regretted working out, not one time, or running one time. Everybody, has a hard time getting into a momentum. Our gym in particular, we have a lot of people in recovery that turn to, they have addicted tendencies and they need something. And when they give all those things up that they were addicted to, whether it's nicotine, drugs, alcohol, whatever it is, they replace it with cardio. When you start hitting bags and sweating and just getting your adrenaline up, it really makes a big difference when you're in that frame of mind. And it's like, it just helps you think so much more clearly. Every great idea and bad idea that I've ever come up with came from a workout or a run. It just clears your mind and lets you just think about the things that are important and how to fix things.
Is that how you ended up with 2 more gyms during COVID?
Yeah. Yeah. So the gym that you just showed is Chelsea Place, which is in Newport Richey. During COVID, there was an opportunity to purchase 2 more gyms that were not going to open back up. And I love this gym so much and this brand so much that I couldn't sit back and watch those 2 gyms close. So we are now proud owners of 3. We have one in Dunedin, one in Newport Richey still, and Safety Harbor. So what else you got?
Kim, you hit some really valid points there when you talked about, people in addiction and, the need to replace the negative feelings with something positive. I'm with you. I used to be a 7-day-a-week, hit the gym, without fail. And I want to say after I had a car crash that sidelined me, so it broke my hands. I couldn't go to the gym. But I still, felt, I could do something. That significantly for me anyway changed after Aiden, and then really after, and then even more so 6 months later after Patrick, where it was like, I didn't care about the gym. I didn't care about eating. I did not really, my work just, thank goodness, my work was like, you come back when you're ready. I don't know whether I'm blessed, working in mental health that they got, they understood that. But getting back into the gym, that was my lifeline. That was my lifeline. And so, it's like music to my ears, I guess. Very comforting to hear, whether it is addiction or coming back from a loss that, that us and people like us have suffered, or, had to endure, that the gyms are there as an outlet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and Kim got me, I mean, it took her and Mitch quite some talking.
Yes.
But it was about 2 years ago when I was going through probably the worst part of the depression since my husband died.
Mm-hmm.
And two, at the same time, I started, and this is what I had realized like afterwards, we had pretty much been really healthy eaters because Bobby had MS, and that is how for 25 years we dealt with his MS is through healthy eating and not being on prescription medications. But I went through this time period, and it was like this time actually 2 years ago, I wasn't eating healthy. I started clipping coupons and it's like, oh, well, I've not tried this before. Maybe I'll try this. And it was all processed foods.
Yep.
And you remember me when I was going through that depression, and Kim and Mitch started talking to me. I was like, Tammy, you really need to come and work out. It'll, really change your frame of mind. And it did. And really going and punching some bags really helps release something. And at that time, my aunt came to visit too, and she gave me an ultimatum: either you snap out of this on your own, or you got to go to a doctor and you got to get on something. And I didn't want to do that. That's how I kept my husband healthy for 25 years, was not to be on prescription medication. And me and even his family today truly believe that we probably wouldn't have had him as long as we did if he would have been on prescription drugs, because the side effects were just horrendous.
Yep.
But yeah, going to the gym was, of course, I'm not like really good at that right now, and with COVID. But the thing is with 9 Round, it's so intimate. You have a personal trainer, and you don't have like the big gyms, just everybody going and whatever. You are really strict about how many people are in the gym, and I mean, I've never seen anybody so fanatical about keeping everybody safe and the gyms clean from the very beginning of COVID. And that continues today.
Yes, it definitely does. And that is absolutely my priority right now, is to keep everybody safe. I don't have control over where people go when they're not in my gym, but I do have control over what happens to them when they're there. And I'm very proud to say that the 9 employees that we have, and myself and my husband, who also works in the gym, none of us have even had a COVID scare. We've never had to go get tested because we had a sore throat or we lost our taste of smell or taste, and none of that stuff. So I'm pretty proud of that, and it's because we're keeping it clean. The staff all has to wear masks during, when they're in the gym with anybody else. We're staying, as I was telling you earlier, we're actually staying 12 feet apart. We're not staying 6 feet apart, which is the standard. We're giving that extra 6 feet to the members because they don't have masks on while they're working out. We keep each person at least 12 feet apart while they're in the gym. The intimacy of our gym, we typically never have more than 5 people in there at any given time. The smallest gym, Chelsea Place, is about 1,000 square feet. So we've never had capacity issues for that reason, because we're able to cycle people through and keep it at a minimum. So it's always been, a revolving door. People come in, 30 minutes later, they walk out the door. I was reading about some of the COVID things that, being like this within 6 feet apart for more than 15 minutes facing somebody is when you're at most risk. Whether that's true or not, that never happens in our gym.
Well, and you were talking about rotating. Now, explain to people how that works, because you actually have different stations.
Correct.
And everybody goes through each station.
Yes, there's 9 stations, thus 9 round. It's a 30-minute circuit. So you come in and at each station you spend 3 minutes. So it's circuit style training with a kickboxing theme. You wear boxing gloves for 6 of the 9 rounds. So the other 3 you don't. I'm sorry, 4. So for 5 of the 9 rounds you have boxing gloves on. The other 4 you typically don't. You're doing strength exercising, jumping rope, that kind of thing, the ab work that we all hate to do, but need to do. So what happens is when somebody comes in and they get to round 1, I can actually start somebody at round 8, for instance, because I always skip 1 station so that we have ample time to clean between people. So I could have somebody at round 1, 3, and 5 that just came in together. And as somebody else walks in, a couple minutes later, somebody else walks in at the top of the next round, I'm going to cycle them into round 1, or I'm going to start them at round 7, so that they can do their 30-minute circuit. So you don't have to wait 30 minutes. You're only waiting a maximum of 3 minutes to get your workout in. And there's a trainer there with you the entire time. And one of the things that makes us stand out against some of the other gyms is that trainer's job is to clean and train you. So while the trainer's demonstrating and correcting and modifying for the members, as soon as they move on to the next round, the round that they just left is thoroughly sanitized. The floor, the equipment, the bags, whatever they may have touched. And the floor is all sanitized. We've got so much cleaning stuff. My mask smells like Lysol when I get home. But, we're keeping safe. We have the nitrile gloves there that we use when our hands start getting a little coarse from the chemicals. But we're wearing masks, we're wearing the gloves, we've got all that stuff, and we've got all the sanitation. So you don't have to sanitize one thing. It's all done for you, and you're watching me do it. So there's no question that it's being done, before and after. So, like our jump ropes are hanging on the wall, for instance. We have, different sizes that are hanging there. The rack of weights that are sitting at round 2. We just ask the members, whatever you touched, leave it on the floor. Don't put it back. That way we can circle back and clean everything that was touched by that person, including the floor.
Super. And too, it's not, you modify the exercises. Hey, Bonnie, like when you got in that car wreck, when you were recovering and healing, you could go to 9 round because they'll modify the exercises. I broke my wrist last year, remember?
Yep.
And I still have a little bit of issues with it, but Christopher, he modified the exercise for me so that I was able to still do it, but with whatever my limit was at the time.
Correct.
And you can do that for anybody, right?
Yep. So in Bonnie's case, she broke both of her hands. You may not be able to wear boxing gloves because your hands are broken, but we can certainly kick the bags like we like to do.
You could have gone in and just kicking the bags too, Bonnie. That feels good, just as good as punching.
So
that makes me sad that I was not aware of 9 round when I was in this crash. I was like, Kim, I needed you then, but I know you now. So.
Yes, you know me now. But we absolutely modify. That is one of our specialties that, we have. Our youngest member is 10, our oldest is 75.
Oh, wow.
Our 75-year-old is not in perfect condition. They have limitations as well. We actually have 3 people in their 70s at our gyms. And we have several children, 10 and up. 10 is the limit. But they're not in the same, condition and body type as the next person, so we have to modify. Right. You're not expected to do the workout the way a 20-year-old fit person that's been working out, their entire life.
Right.
Or the captain of the football team. We're not expecting that. We love that and we encourage it.
Right.
But if you're not able to, that's okay too.
or somebody my age when you realize that you really need to work out because your balance is off.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So this workout is amazing. I mean, it really does. It's anaerobic. It works on balance. It works on eye-hand coordination.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
it just
wow,
helps you find that inner strength mentally and physically that you need for day-to-day survival, especially when you're dealing with a death in the family or, of a loved one, whether it's by suicide or, or natural causes. It doesn't matter.
Right.
You still are going to go through a grieving process, and you have to grieve. And, that's one thing that, that is so hard with suicide is getting through that process. People don't know what to say to you. They just don't. When someone dies in a car accident, it's usually pretty sudden and unexpected. And car accidents take the lives of many people, no matter what the age, but you know what to say. Oh, I'm so sorry. You offer
Right.
your condolences. But when someone dies of suicide, people tend to turn away because they don't know what to say.
Yeah. It's
Afraid of saying or they are afraid of saying the wrong thing. Because unfortunately, and Kim, thank you for asking, I'm going to digress here a moment. Thank you for asking a question that popped in my head. What was the age limit for going into 9 round? And you said 10 was your limit, which, I personally find absolutely refreshing because, I think we forget, that when a death happens, via, as you said, suicide or, a crash or, natural causes, we forget that sometimes, there are young children that are affected, in Aiden's death. Kira and, I still call her my daughter-in-law, even though she's married to someone else. I love my blended family. But she and her cousin, they have a younger, they had a child together. And, Mikey is now 6. Kira may correct me on his age. But, it's nice that your gym offers a place, for, the younger people that are affected by this as well.
Yeah, it's necessary. In the 10-year-old, I have one person who I believe he's about 14 now. He started when he was 10. And he's not there to lose weight. He's not there to get in shape. Mom brought him there because he had some issues and needed an outlet. And what better place, to have that bonding with mom, go to the gym with her. That was kind of fun. And, and then you put the boxing gloves on and it makes it exciting, that is probably the most intriguing part. And these kids want to come. They want to come in there and hit stuff. And, it's a safe environment. And it's definitely a place where they can release, be themselves, and just have a good time.
Did you find when you started going to the gym before you purchased it that did it begin to help you a little bit process what you were going through with your dad?
It did. My drive to join the gym initially was, as I had mentioned, I was a smoker, and after 31 years, I quit smoking. At all costs, I was hell-bent on quitting, and I had tried several times and did not succeed, but this time I was determined. So I allowed myself to gain the weight that you naturally gain when you quit smoking. Mm-hmm. After about 9 months after I had quit, I decided I needed to get off my butt and actually do something, because otherwise I'm never going to fit out the door. And so, because I was gaining weight rapidly, I got up into a size 16. And that was unacceptable for me. I was always a beanpole. So for me to go through that was, it was challenging. So I went to the gym, and that was my drive, was to go there to lose weight and to stay a non-smoker. You can't, some people can, but it's not recommended that you do this type of cardio while you're smoking. Your heart will be a little taxed. So I also knew that it would help me to not go back to that bad habit too. Once I started accomplishing my weight loss goals, which only took me a few months, to start really making progress on that, I realized that anytime I was having a bad day, I go to the gym and hit stuff, and I felt better. And yes, every time so to make matters worse, my father died a week before his birthday. And my father and I were also estranged for many, many years, for about 17 years. And so the anniversary of us reuniting and reconnecting was also during that time.
Oh.
So, and then we had his funeral during that time. So October, the last 2 weeks of October into the first week of November is a difficult time for me. There's too many anniversaries. And so having the gym and to be able to go there and just not even think about it, not even talk about it, and just get through that memory is definitely helpful. And I experienced it that year for the first time, and I had never experienced that before. It was just like, okay, I'm going to go get a bottle of wine and a pack of cigarettes and just go sit by myself. And I did, but that wasn't healthy, and all it did was make me cry. So, now having this, sure, I still get sad, and sure, I have my moments, but I don't feel like I need to mask it anymore, and hide it like that, because I'm able to get through the milestones. And I think that until you actually do, I think that is definitely part of the grieving process, that you have to go through that. You can't just mask it. You can't drink or do drugs and just kind of hide and get that numbness inside, because it's all going to be there the next day.
Right.
It doesn't go away. Whereas you have to learn how to live with it. They say the pain never goes away, and it doesn't. It just gets easier to live with.
Right.
And you have to find those coping skills to come to terms with that and accept that.
Well, and in the time period that since I met you, I know that you've seen some of the changes in me, but I've also seen the changes in you. When you first started even volunteering with us, I could open my mouth and she would start crying. Or even she'd look at me and I would open my mouth and she would start crying. But you're much, much better.
Yes.
And you have, you've grown so much. The 9 Round was our presenting sponsor for Art for Hope this year. Even though we couldn't have an in-person event, we started having our meetings in January thinking we were going to have it. Mm-hmm. And we drug it out until August before we finally decided we could not have an in-person. But you stayed right there with us and was our presenting sponsor. And I got a text from her one day, mm-hmm. and she said, I sent something, check this out. And I was like, what? And that video that you sent, it was a PSA for mm-hmm. the Foundation for Art for Hope, which was, it blew my mind that how far that you had come and in being able to talk and mm-hmm. express your feelings, because I think that for a lot of years you just kind of hid it and kept mm-hmm. it inside, which a lot of people do. I find.
You do, and I agree with that. I think that a lot of people do suppress it and not even talk about it because when you start talking about it, your audience either does what I do and cry, or nobody really wants to. They don't know what to say. So you're not talking about something normal. You're not talking about grandma who died in hospice. And, you're not talking about something that people can relate to. There is a growing community of us survivors that when you find somebody and you can talk about it, it does help. I remember looking for support groups out there right after my dad passed away. And there was nothing. There was nothing for survivors of suicide. There wasn't even a name for it, so you just kind of dealt with it on your own. You had nobody to talk to. I had, obviously I had some friends that were supportive, and they came over and they helped me. They would bring me food. My husband was traveling a lot back then for his job. I had to take off more time than I wanted to from work because it was all just so much. And you also have to remember, I was their caregiver.
Right.
So, which made it even harder because now I went from juggling 1,001 things to doing absolutely nothing. So when you stop like that, and then you have to actually deal with your own feelings and your own emotions, it makes it really, really challenging.
Kim, that's an excellent point. Now, adding a layer for myself, as I shared in our first episode, I had done an interview for Fox. And I remember, when Evan asked me, the question, you're a mental health professional. How did this happen to you? Mind you, the question was not meant to be, demeaning or degrading or anything else like that. Because I adore Evan. I think he's an excellent journalist. But the purpose of that question, highlighted a really good point, and that sometimes we don't know where to go. I found myself sometimes like processing in my head, if this were someone else, what would you say to them? And, there were many times that even I was at a loss of, how do I deal with this? Or I found myself saying, this is your work. Why are you so confused? This is your work. How, not as much, why are you going through this? But it was like, this light, that, might have been there at, 40 watts, now became like 1,000 watts because, it brought, everything to light. And so, things like, the foundation and, having, your gym, or other places for lost survivors to go to, I think is a godsend, in addition to, mental health professionals. I mean, not that I feel that mental health is a panacea for everyone. But, again, having somebody, having either someone or some place to go as you're dealing with this process, and as we've said over and over and over again, the process looks different for everybody. It is not getting over your loss. It is learning how to exist in this new normal where that person's physical being does not exist anymore or is not there anymore.
Exactly. And not everybody, and I am not shy when it comes to mental health and going to talk to somebody, because I think that everyone at some point should talk about it, but some people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to dig up those feelings, and that's okay. So it's not an easy fix. It's not, go to therapy, take a pill, and move on with your life. It's not. What is going to work for Tammy and what is going to work for Bonni. And, even though you're in that situation where you have the resources and the access, you may not want those resources in your particular situation because you're not ready for them.
Yeah, everybody has to go through it in their time. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, too, and you found this out, when, especially in this type of situation, finding those resources, and even if there are those resources, is really difficult and few and far between.
Correct.
Since we started the foundation and our Purple Folder program and been out in the community, we're there as somebody who's lived the experience, not a professional or anything like that. We're coming from living the experience, which is different than clinicians and the mental health profession actually sees it. So, and we've been able to pull out a few more resources, but really not that many, and not for what is really needed for people.
Correct. Yeah, there's no textbook to tell you how to deal with somebody who is a survivor of suicide. It's not written anywhere. It's written everywhere for every other cause of death, but not for that.
Not for lost survivors.
And like you said, everybody is different, and everybody is going to deal with it differently. Having these resources, whatever is available out there, is helpful. And I love this purple packet. It's got all the information in there that can help guide people in the right direction.
Yes, and we're actually in the process of updating it. I made a connection with somebody this past week. I was doing a training for it's kind of like what to look for. It's not Safe Talk with ASFP. It was something else, but it was also, it was guided towards children and teens and first responders. Not only first responders in dealing with what they deal with on a day-by-day basis, but also helping them dealing with teens or children, which puts first responders in a very precarious and hard situation, not only with their lives or, whatever. But anyways, so this woman reached out to me that was on this training with me, and ironically, within just a couple days, somebody reached out to her in South Hillsborough County who had lost their 18-year-old child to suicide just a couple months ago. And she's like, Tammy, what do you have? And I said, give me your address. And we mailed her a purple folder. So she should have received it by now.
Good.
And
there's so many people I've texted you in the middle of the night, I need a purple packet. A very close friend of mine from Connecticut called me a couple weeks ago and told me that one of her best friends that she grew up with, her and her husband, he just turned 50 this year. He also has, spoken of suicide on several different occasions and attempted to take his own life. They were getting him the help that he needed as far as, therapy. His job was helping. There were all these resources pulled together to help him, and he still ended up taking his life not too long ago. So you sent her that packet, and the first thing she said to me is, I wish I had talked to you about this sooner. Because there's so many different things that he could have taken from it.
Right.
But she, like most people, they don't talk about it. Until you start talking about it, you don't realize that the person sitting next to you has a loved one that is, notoriously, saying that they're going to take their own life. And that person doesn't know what to do. They just keep it inside and they do the best that they can. And that's why I did that video, because there's so many things that red flags that we need to be aware of, and there's so many things that you shouldn't say to people when they tell you that they're thinking about it.
Right.
There's so many appropriate ways to redirect them and redirect their thinking, and I think that we all need to be a little more cognizant of that.
Well, and that's why we started all this.
Yep.
To begin with, and it started with Art for Hope and the foundation, and now this program. We want people to get more comfortable talking about it, because you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
We didn't know until we got thrown into this crazy world that we're living now. We want people to feel comfortable. It's because you can, AFSP has a saying, talk saves lives. And unfortunately, I experienced it within my own family from people not talking about it. Whether or not it would have saved my husband's life, it may have that day. Maybe it wouldn't, down the road. But information is key to trying to prevent it. Even though Bonni, we're started on the side of for lost survivors, but it circles back to prevention.
Absolutely. And that's the bulk of my work is prevention. And Tammy, you brought out an excellent point. And Kim, with you, starting the conversation with, talking to people, whether it is individuals who are having thoughts of suicide, or family members, friends or family members of people who might be thinking of it. Before I came to Florida, I used to do an extensive training I was inside of a jail. Working inside of a jail.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, I always, whenever I tell people I was in jail, I had to
clarify.
But again, there are some key points, and hopefully, Tammy, you and I will highlight these important conversations, because it is true. You can talk to somebody who is thinking about suicide, and yes, you may save their life or prevent the suicide that day. But it's also important for individuals to understand that when a person completes it is not your fault. It is not that you did not do enough. Even though we think the coulda, shoulda, wouldas, that, if those of us in mental health say, don't do that, that's not, they happen. It's normal. It's a part of our process. But again, the conversations are one that need to be had. And, I am, continue to be blessed that we have this platform to bring awareness.
Well, and again, Bonnie, we start talking and then all of a sudden our time is like, oh, we're almost done. So
Exactly.
I want Kim to tell everybody where your gyms are located.
Okay.
And and if you have any specials coming up for the new year.
Okay.
So we're getting close. So
Okay. As I said, we have 3. We have one in Newport Richey, Trinity area on 7 Springs Boulevard in Chelsea Place. We have one on Enterprise and McMullen Booth in Safety Harbor. And we have one on Main Street and CR1 at that intersection in a Publix Plaza as well in Dunedin. And our hours vary from location to location, but our website's pretty accurate with that. And we do, obviously, New Year's is coming, so we will be having a New Year's special. We'll be rolling that out right after Christmas. We have specials throughout the year, depending on the appropriate time. But all memberships are unlimited training. We're open at least 6 days a week in all locations. And when you join one, you belong to all 3 of them. And you have a nice, intimate family that you belong to. And actually, I will say that I learned today, this is the type of environment we have, is I learned this morning that one of our members' dad passed away, and him and his whole family, wife and kids, belong to our gym. And so before I came here, I ordered flowers to send to him, just because that's the kind of relationship we have with our members. They're part of a family, and they belong. They belong with us. So we go through their life events with them as well.
well, that's really cool. Well, I am so glad that you joined us today. And you did really awesome.
Thank you for having me.
And just remember, we do need to exercise, even though it's hard. And like Kim said, once you get into it, you'll be good. So remember, there's always hope.